Morning.
Morning. How you
Morning,
doing,
Jerry.
Donald?
I'm good. Had a little bit of a late night last night.
Yeah, investigating.
Now, I was actually working on a REM pod build that I've been trying to get done for a while. Um, I sent you some pictures of it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. So, okay, and try to get this. Come on, there we go. I did not get transferred over to get this thing shared out. Uh,
Today, we are going to be talking about the 1990 Royal Rumble. This was a request from Nick Apawaski, if I'm saying that correct.
Something like that. Good morning, Joe.
Hey, Joe. Good morning, Joe.
Yeah, Nick had been requesting several shows over the course of this series. And this year, I think it's one of his favorite Royal Rumbles. The Royal Rumble is his favorite event of the year, as it is mine. And he asked us to talk about this one, which we are gladly doing. Yeah, Chris,
Hey,
about
Chris.
that. um, so we're going to be talking about the 1990 Rumble. It was the third ever Royal Rumble, second on pay-per-view. Um, and this one here had a lot of, as far as the Rumble match itself, had a lot of history. It made a lot of history. Started a lot of different trends as well. And and it had a pretty decent undercard, I thought.
Yeah. You started with the Bushwhackers and um, Fabulous Rougeos.
That seemed to be the one match that, to me, didn't have any kind of history behind it. It was almost like this was a thrown together match, whereas the other three matches did have some history, unless something happened that I don't know about. But I wasn't into wrestling at this time, so I don't really know what kind of a history was between the two teams.
I don't know. Bushwhackers were always a big fan favorite. Um, I was one of those that like, I could take them or leave them either way.
Yeah.
I wasn't a huge fan of the Bushwhackers.
But the fans in that arena that day, all of them were going like this.
Yeah,
Even, even the adults, the older people, they were all into it.
yeah. And it may be that point of not watching as much back then with the Bushwhackers and all that. I do remember the WrestleMania of that year. That was the first WrestleMania I got to watch actually live or as it was happening. We not watch replays um, there, but we'll get into that later. Didn't
And that
the
was
Bushwhackers recently pass away?
a match. Um, this is one of those few times where Jacques was wearing a full beard. No, normally he's clean shaven, but this one event he has a beard. So that's kind of strange.
Yeah, didn't one of the Bushwhackers recently pass?
Butch last year. He actually passed away during WrestleMania weekend when he came in for one of their celebrity signings. He ended up passing away in between the two WrestleMania days.
Goodness.
Yeah, he flew in from New Zealand and did something that night and ended up passing away that night.
That's crazy.
I know.
I guess you got to go. What better place to go when you're a professional
Yeah.
wrestler?
And Luke, at the age of 77, I think is still wrestling. And I had only ever watched these guys during their Bushwhacker run, and I find it so hard to believe that these guys were ruthless, violent. It it's just it astounds me that they were like that. Okay, Bushwhacker Luke. His last match was in September last year, and he actually had one, two, three, four, five. He had 6 matches in 2023, so he's still going strong.
Yeah, Robert Miller uh, is Butch,
Yep.
and Luke is Brian Wickens. Um, I'm wanting to say, if I remember right, they were called the Sheep Herders back before they were in WWE.
Yes, they were the sheep herders, and before that, they were also the Kiwis.
And I
And
think they were at Mid South long time ago as the Sheep Herders.
South, Mid South. Trying to find it. You see, they were in Southwest Championship
Mid
Wrestling.
Atlantic, Universal Wrestling Federation as the Kiwis and the Sheep Herders.
Yeah, Mid Atlantic. NWA, basically. They were in WWC. They were all over the place, and then they came to the WWF, and Vince wanted to turn them babyface. And I remember seeing an interview. I think it was Butch. He he almost took it like he was challenging Vince to do it, because I don't see how you can turn us into faces after all the stuff that we've done. But go ahead. And sure enough, he turned them face, and they were one of the most popular tag teams in all of wrestling. Um, but the match itself was pretty good, and I like how they do that battering ram finisher. It not your typical wrestling finish, but it seemed to suit them well.
Remember,
Um,
remember during the match, I'm trying to think which one it was, but it kept on biting the Rougeos, and Jesse kept on uh, hollering at the referee about, or commenting that the referee just letting it go.
yep. Um, Actually, there was a whole thing between Tony and Jesse. How they were both commenting that the referee was letting both teams getting away with stuff. And that's another thing I want to bring out. So Tony Schiavone was originally not supposed to be doing commentary that night. It was supposed to have been Jesse and Vince McMahon.
I wonder why that
Yep.
changed.
According to Tony, Vince had a um, late night drunk fest, and had a massive hangover the next day. And he called Tony. Hey, did you bring your tux? Yes, I did. Good. You're doing commentary tonight. So he wasn't expecting to do it. He was just planning on doing maybe some backstage stuff. Um,
I read where Shivani was only with them for a year.
yeah,
Of course, everybody knows he was with WCW. Had a big run at WCW for
yes.
many years.
He was with WWF for a year. He did, I want to say he did Wrestling Challenge, the commentary for that. And he also did the commentary for SummerSlam '89, and Vince did not like his commentary there. Um, and the only reason that Tony did commentary for the Rumble here is because he couldn't do it, which kind of surprises me because I figured if anybody would do commentary, it'd be Gorilla Monsoon. Because this was during that time where Gorilla and Jesse were doing all of the pay-per-views. So I'm not sure why it didn't have Gorilla do it instead of Tony. Um, but the 1990 Rumble was held in Orlando, the Orlando Arena in Florida, which the arena itself would host history 4 years later with the first ever pay-per-view match between Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. And ironically, it would be in WCW instead of WWF at the time. Um, and there was a dark match before the Bushwhackers and the Rougeaus. Paul Roma defeated the Brooklyn Brawler in the pre-show.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. Um, then the Bushwhackers came in and beat the Fabulous Rougeaus. Yes, he was. Um, after almost 14 minutes, good opener for the pay-per-view. And then we get into our first grudge match, which Brutus the Barber Beefcake versus the Genius. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this may have been the Genius's only pay-per-view match with him.
Let me look that up.
I know he was in the corner with for many people for several pay-per-views, but I think this is the only actual match that he had on pay-per-view. And I guess this was sort of a revenge match for the Genius getting a countout win over Hulk Hogan just a few weeks before.
Genius did.
Yes,
That's big.
it is big. Um, and it was around this time when Mr. Perfect was getting something of an angle with Hulk Hogan, but it never really went anywhere for whatever reason. Um, but Beefcake and Genius went to a double disqualification. They had a nice match, but a lot of it was the Genius prancing around doing a whole bunch of athletic stuff.
Yeah. He was doing cartwheels and stuff outside the ring.
Outside the ring, inside the ring. There was one where he did a flip and then did this to Brutus, and then Brutus did that same thing to him, and it caused the Genius to recoil back into his corner. It I guess it was an okay match. Nothing spectacular. Um, and the ending of this match would lead to Beefcake taking on Mr. Perfect at WrestleMania.
Jesus.
That is correct, Joe. He was Randy's brother, and the story goes that when Randy signed on to the WWF, one of the conditions was that he brings Lanny with him, and that he's employed the whole time that Randy's there. And for whatever reason, that did not happen when Randy went to WCW, unless Lanny was just done with the business. Um,
Yeah, I don't see anywhere. I don't see anywhere where he had anything other than the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. And
yeah,
of
I
course, he
think
continued wrestling. He did house shows and Saturday Night's Main Event and things like that.
yeah, and Lanny also passed away just a little over a year ago too.
We're getting to that age where we're losing a lot of you know wrestlers we grew up watching.
Yeah, well, he was only 68, so he wasn't that old.
What did he die of?
Heart failure.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, More so, what to me, what I remember him more for is his poetry that he recited before his matches and before the matches of the people that he was managing. Like when he managed the Beverly Brothers, he recited a piece of poetry before their matches, and also that there was one where he did a poetry reading before the main event of SummerSlam, which seemed to be really out of place. But being that his brother was in the main event, maybe that was a Randy call. Um, because as far as I know, there was never really any interaction between Randy and the Genius on any show, as far as I know. And yes, I forgot about the Frisbees. The Genius also used to do a thing for Frisbees in the crowd. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Um, but the match ended in a double disqualification, and Brutus gave the Genius a little bit of a haircut before Mr. Perfect came in and put a stop to that. And that would eventually lead to the Beefcake Perfect match at WrestleMania.
All right. He was at International Championship Wrestling, Mid South, Continental Championship Wrestling, or Continental Wrestling Association, excuse me. Um, then WWE or WWF, as it was called back then.
Yeah.
He had a stint run between 93 and 99, 2005, 2020. Um, didn't really wrestle a whole lot during his later years. He started living in Ecuador.
Okay.
Published two books, one a collection of poems and limericks.
Well, I didn't know he actually published any.
He's got two books published. One is a collection of, excuse me, one a collection of poems and limericks. Most are related to drug and alcohol awareness,
Okay.
directed toward young children.
All I'll have to see if I can find it. I'd like to get that because he always did pretty good poetry. What I liked was when he ended the poem on this particular instance where he says, "I am the world's smartest man, and beefcake is double dung." It seemed like an amateur way, a really good poem, and then he's ended that last line with something that would have been an amateurish um, piece of literature. And this match was also 6 months away from Beefcake's own accident, where he had his entire face destroyed, um, almost killing him.
Yeah.
How he survived that with the way that I heard it described, I have no idea. Yeah,
Yeah. He talked about that, that whole change over to the after Adrian Adonis haircut that he gave Adrian during it was Piper's match. It was a hair
yeah,
match.
WrestleMania 3.
And he come out with these little scissors at the beginning. It's like really ain't getting over, and uh, something just popped in his head about the big shears. So as
And
soon as
he
he
was
brought those shears out,
with the crowd.
do what?
He was insanely over with the crowd.
I always liked British Beefcake.
Yeah.
But when he came out with the shears, it was like everybody just started giving you those big pops and all. That's like who would have thought?
Yeah. And he was supposed to win the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam that year, but that was before the accident occurred. Um, so fun match to watch. The next match, that was a brutal match between Ronnie Garvin and Greg Valentine. Um, these two showed us, hey, if you want to get into wrestling, this is what you're going to have to deal with. And the chops that these two guys gave each other were um, Gunther reminds me a lot of what these guys did to each other that day. The chops, the head hits, the head butts, um, and it was a submission match too.
Yes, they kept on trying to do pinfalls,
I
you know, during the match. I'm trying to find out which match it was because I did not know this until I read it somewhere. Um, Shane McMahon, of course, everybody knows who Shane is. Um, he was actually a referee in one of the matches um, during the Rumble. Trying to see which
yes,
one it is.
yeah, he was going by Shane Stevens.
Right.
Um, he was he was a referee for a couple of years. He basically just working his way up the company
Right.
instead of being given a big spot. What Vince could have easily have done that if he wanted, but he made Shane work his way up.
Yeah, he started at see here. He started at age 15, working in the warehouse filling merchandise orders.
Mhm.
He was a referee.
And Stephanie did the same thing, and Stephanie also modeled the shirts for the magazine too.
Really.
Yes.
Yeah. It's actually a good thing. It's you're so dang rich. You know, nowadays. The McMahons, I guess giving them that work ethic.
Yes.
Not just handing stuff over. You know,
And that's really the right way to do it too.
it is. It teaches them a value,
Hmm.
the value of the dollar.
And seeing where those two ended up later in life, I'd say it worked.
Yeah, especially Shane. I mean, at the later years, everybody remembers him as wrestling and doing some crazy stuff. You
Oh
know,
boy, did he ever! How he didn't kill himself on a couple of occasions is beyond me.
yeah, it's strange at all the stuff he did. He went out with nothing more than got an injury from leaping over somebody in a match.
Yep.
You know, with all the crazy stuff he did, which I can say this is like, um, you
Well,
put your body through so much.
done anything in a year and a half at that point.
Yeah, you put your body through so much stuff when you're younger. It eventually catches up to you.
And oh boy, it couldn't have caught up to him in a worse way. Right there in front of
Yeah,
8,000 people, making your return at WrestleMania.
and
Wow.
just well, you think about the knee injuries, um, like McMahon tore both his getting in the ring.
Yeah,
Uh, Triple H is torn a couple
he tore
quads.
both of them as well.
Yeah, tore him. During matches. It wasn't where I saw just crazy stuff.
Hmm.
You know, your knees can only take so much.
Diesel tore his one time.
Yeah,
I want to say that was also on pay per view as well.
mm-hmm. Because he was going for a tag and fell.
Hmm. Um, Ronnie Garvin and Greg Valentine. That was such a great match. I thought it was um, heavy hitting, hard hitting. Went on for over 15 minutes, and these two guys just did not let up on each other. They it. I think at this point, this was one of those few matches that if it wasn't the main event, it really could have been.
It was a really good match. Going back and forth. Of course, you got Hard outside too. Um,
He just he is so much fun to watch, so much fun to listen to. Um, and there was one spot on during the match that was so funny. Both of them were wearing those shin guards, and Valentine put the figure four on Garvin, and Garvin just sat up and he starts looking at the crowd and he's smiling, and people forgot he had that shin guard on, so it was protecting him. And he starts laughing at him and doing this. How Greg didn't start laughing himself, I don't know, because that was so funny. Um, that was probably the best part of the match, that little comedic factor there. But other than that, they put each other through hell. The chops, you heard those chops. Um, a match like that would have held up very well today. What are you looking for?
I'm looking at Ronnie Garvin. He started in
Uh,
1962, 62 to 84.
Rugged Ronnie Garvin,
Yeah,
former NWA champion.
yeah. I had actually forgotten about him up until this Royal Rumble match. I was like, oh yeah, Ronnie Garvin.
This was actually his last big match for the WWF before he left. He had been with them for a year. He debuted, I think he debuted at the '89 Rumble. Then he had a match at WrestleMania. He was
He was at Survivor Series.
he was at Survivor Series, and he was the ring announcer at the '89 SummerSlam because he was barred from wrestling because of what was going on with him and Greg Valentine. And this, I think this should have been a WrestleMania match. Um, Nothing against them having it at the Rumble, but this match would have helped WrestleMania be better than what it was. Because WrestleMania 6 had a lot of very short matches. And they could have done without that whole musical thing with Valentine and Honky Tonk Man there towards the end of WrestleMania. And they could have had at least Valentine and Garvin fight it out there. And even Greg wasn't very happy with what they had to do at WrestleMania.
Yeah, he left in 1990. Um,
He left in
left.
nine. He left and came back in a span of 2 weeks in December of that year.
He ran his own promotion in Knoxville, Tennessee, called Tennessee Mountain Wrestling. He was semi-retired. Well, in 2000, competed in a Legends Battle Royal Rumble. Juggalo Championship Wrestling. That's
I forgot about that, Chris. Ronnie Garvin was also a pilot.
yeah. I'm reading it now.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Became an airline pilot in his retirement from wrestling. Holds commercial and instrument rating for single engine and multi-engine aircraft. He owns several car dealerships in North Carolina, Gaston, North Carolina.
And Ronnie was also one of those guys who showed early on that you don't have to be a big man to become a champion. Uh, but it was such a great match with those two because those two are the epitome of old school.
Yeah. I mean, Greg had been around for a long time.
Yeah, even at this point.
Yeah.
And he did stick around for a little while longer. He had one more WrestleMania match after this at WrestleMania 7. He participated in 3 more Rumble matches after this year. Did he ever team with I don't know if he did or not.
Team with who?
His father,
Uh,
Valentine. I don't know if he ever got to team with his father before he passed away or not. Let's see. Okay, he was born in 51.
yeah, he's 72 right now. He formed a tag team with Ric Flair.
That's the age his father was when he died. Johnny Valentine was 72 when he died. Oh. Okay.
He actually started in the WWF, then owned by Vincent J. McMahon,
I
managed by the Grand Wizard. Good Lord. I hate to even look.
Johnny Valentine's last match was in 1978.
It's, oh, okay, his dad.
Yes. Uh, it does not look like Greg ever teamed up with his father. I don't know why, but I thought that Johnny Valentine died in a plane crash. Oh, here it is. He retired because of a plane crash. That's what happened. He retired because of a plane crash.
Valentine was actually, I'd forgotten about that. Brutus Beefcake called the Dream Team.
Yep. They they had well, let's see here.
Dino Bravo came in and changed, replaced Beefcake.
Yes. That was when Beefcake became the barber.
Right.
Let's see. Yeah, so Greg Valentine and Beefcake were the tag team champions at WrestleMania 2, and then they split up at WrestleMania 3. Um, but Greg Valentine was one of my favorite wrestlers back in the day, although he was on his way out from the WWF when I started watching wrestling, and then he went to WCW for a little while, and then he came back very briefly at the end of '93, beginning of '94, and then he disappeared after that. I think he went to the AWF.
In the independent circuit, yeah.
Yeah.
He was at Royal Championship Wrestling from 96 to 98. Uh,
Oh, I forgot about
faced
that.
Randy Savage on Monday Nitro on July 1st, 1996.
I forgot about that one.
I didn't realize he was ever in WCW.
I remember seeing him in '92 in WCW, and
Yeah, May 17, 1992 at Wrestle War.
yeah, and at that time I was just starting to watch wrestling. I did not know that wrestlers could go from one organization to another. I thought that once you started wrestling somewhere, that was where you were for life. Um, I had no idea about contracts and all of that, and
Right.
these guys jump organizations every so often. I had no clue of that at that time, but Greg Valentine was definitely one of those guys who seemed to be extremely dependable, um, very believable. He was your wrestlers, um, and he was one of those guys where, as the match goes on, the favor is more to him.
Yeah,
Brian,
he's one of those. Yeah, Brian Knobs is his brother-in-law. Um,
it wouldn't surprise me.
but yeah, back in the 80s, you had a lot of, especially with wrestlers that have been around a while. Been there in the 70s and all that, and coming in and wrestling there. Those are your old school wrestlers.
Yeah,
And he was definitely one of those.
he I would say that he was one of the last old school wrestlers um, in this time. But to me, he's one of those who is deserving of all the praise he can get. He's in the Hall of Fame. I don't think Ronnie Garvin is. Let's see. Ronnie Garvin is not in the WWE Hall of Fame. Uh, for that matter, he's not in any Hall of Fame, but he should be. Ronnie Garvin should be in the Hall of Fame, and he's not in any. So I'm kind of surprised by that, especially since he is a former NWA World Champion.
I wonder if that's a personal thing.
A lot of times it is a personal thing if somebody doesn't get put in the Hall of Fame because somebody who makes that decision doesn't like them.
I'm talking about, on his own deal. It's like he may not accepted any of it.
Well, just like Paul Heyman has said that he has turned down the Hall of Fame several times, but this time it feels right, and that's mainly because of it being in Philadelphia,
Right.
which is the right choice.
The Nasty Boys, yeah. I never got into the Nasty Boys.
They were different.
Yeah, I never really cared much for them, as far as wrestling wise. Um, I don't know. Maybe in that time in wrestling where I kind of started taking a backseat and a break from it because it was getting
And
really,
now I was getting into it.
yeah, it was getting. I don't know. Some of the personas were really stupid, in my opinion, back in that day.
Couldn't get much worse than T.L. Hopper, I can tell you that. Uh, the next match is the shortest match of the night. Hacksaw Jim Duggan against the Big Boss Man. Another heavy hitting match. These two threw everything at each other. There was one where Hacksaw was flying off the rope and rammed himself into the Boss Man, and Boss Man flew out of the ring during that match. They were only at it for 6 minutes, but these two were sweating so much and tumbling around so much that you would think that they had just had a 20-minute match.
Yeah, this one ended up in a double disqualification, did it not? No, he disqualified. Yeah, yeah. No, Duggan. Duggan was announced the winner after Slick tried to distract the referee, or got in.
Yeah,
And Duggan with a nightstick. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, Bossman was disqualified because he used the nightstick on Duggan. And then after that, Duggan got his 2x4 and went after Bossman.
Yeah, I would guess this didn't end their feud.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why they were feuding each other. I know that they were at the time. And this was one of Bossman's final matches as a heel before he turned face.
I'm guessing they didn't show up in their. Joe was saying I once had ICP in the cab. The way I knew who they were was from wrestling. I'm assuming they didn't have their makeup on at the time.
If they didn't have their makeup on, even after watching them in wrestling, I would not have known who they were.
Yeah, it's that whole that music genre that I didn't listen to, and don't listen to now. I like their Oddity song. and that's just because of the oddities.
Yeah.
I thought that was and I wonder why that didn't last as long as it did, because that was a good gimmick.
It
Yeah.
There were a lot of things at that time that did not last long. Um, the oddities were basically another gang that was the same time as Nation of Domination, the DOA, the Bourgeois. So the oddities were pretty much just another gang, and that whole gang warfare era did not last long at all. And to be perfectly honest, I'm glad it did not last long because I wasn't a fan of the whole gang thing.
Well, you've always had, you know, um, you know, um, factions in wrestling for a long time.
Yeah, but they never took it to this level before. They,
Oh, that's cool. So they also bought me breakfast and gave me $100 tip on a $20 fare. That's cool.
hell yeah. Um, I'm, I enjoy factions, but I don't enjoy them when they do it like a gang style. That's basically what it was in the late '80s, late '90s. They did it like gang versus gang, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I can see that being a heel faction. That's kind of the way it is. I mean, it's just like the bloodline now. It's the
Yeah.
same basic scenario of it where you know we're going to jump in and help. And I know it's all storyline, but um, it's the thing I see on social media a lot and some of the wrestling pages and all that. People complaining about Roman one not defending the title as much as everybody else has. Number two, he can't win without interference and help from the bloodline. I'm like, and there are people arguing back and forth about it.
Well,
About the whole thing is like
that's the whole point of the factions.
you do realize that it's a scripted.
But
You
don't
know,
they also realize that the four horsemen also interfered in each other's matches?
yeah. I mean, it's like you're arguing that he can't win without help from the bloodline. And like
The
it's
heroes.
scripted that way.
Yeah.
It has
The
nothing to do with
hero
Roman.
guys.
It has nothing
Get
to do
over it.
with he can't win. It's like this is the way it's scripted. You know,
Yeah.
and I guess you know.
And they talk about the amount of times that Roman has defended the title. I did the math. Since he's won the title on average, he has defended the title every 23 days. When you take all of his defenses and spread it out, his
As an average,
on average, he has defended the title every 23 days, which means he defended that title a lot during that in that first year, and then it just spread out. But when you look at the amount of days that he has had the title and the amount of defenses that he's had, it's one every 23 days. People compare that to Hogan, Backlund, San Martino. These guys defended their titles every 2 days, every 3 days. Granted, it was a completely different scenario back then, a completely different time. These guys were going every single day. Now they are not doing that, which is really, I think, better for their health to not be going day after day after day after day. Which is why, if you notice, a lot of today's wrestlers have been wrestling for 20 years, whereas those guys, they were lucky to make it 10 years or 15 years. So that's my argument on that. So yeah, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Big Boss Man. Not a great match, but I thought it was a good match. Um, Another old school match like Ronnie and Greg. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering about that too. Now that Roman's doing back-to-back nights at WrestleMania, um, but we can talk more about that on WrestleMania weekend after that first night. So, so Joe, Chris, we're expecting you guys to be on this show on WrestleMania weekend when we do our April 6th show, April 7th. So we're gonna be doing a show in between the two nights of WrestleMania. We're expecting both of you to be on
Yeah, what's our next
there. Yeah.
show?
So
Is that the morning? Is that the morning of the first day? Are we doing
it,
one
it
the
can be
morning of?
it can be morning, afternoon, April 7th on Sunday.
Okay, I am definitely off that day. Let me put that on my calendar right now. If I don't put it on my calendar, I'll forget about it.
I think he already wrote it down on the calendar because we were talking about doing the show in between the two WrestleManias so that we could talk about what happened on the first night and then predict what we think is going to happen on the second night based on what happened.
Right, that's the morning of the second night, right?
Yeah. So next, the big one, the 30-man Royal Rumble.
Let me pull up the entrance. All right.
Yeah.
So
Before,
DiBiase.
before we talk about the match, I do want to say this about the arena. I don't know what it was that they did for their lighting thing, but the shows before this Rumble and the shows after this Rumble, everything is all lit up. You see the crowd, the rings brightly lit. This one here is different.
The crowd area was kind of dark. I noticed on some of the entrances.
It was dark. Parts of the crowd was dark, and even in the ring, it's not dark, but it's not lit up either.
Hmm.
It's really weird the way that they did it. Um, not a fan of that, and obviously they were not a fan of that either because they didn't do that again. It was just a weird lighting situation that they had. Now I don't know if that had anything to do with how they had the row of lights going all the way around the top of the arena, which was which is a cool trademark for them to have, but their lighting was just off for that event. It's almost like you're watching everything in a haze, sort of.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Before we get into uh, this Rumble, I was looking this up. It's like, it really wasn't up until that point. You know, we all know the Rumble as the winner being the, number one contender for whatever title
Yeah.
they want to choose at the time. It wasn't until '93. Wasn't until 1993 Royal Rumble that became um an additive, I guess you'd say,
Hmm.
into it. So you still got 90, 91, 92, where it was just a standalone match, whoever won. Um, reason Hogan being the champion, he was actually in the Rumble during this match.
This one here, um, This one here is actually the first time that every champion in the WWF was in the Rumble.
Yeah, you had a lot of big names in this one.
They did. You had Hulk Hogan, who was the World Wrestling Federation champion, the Ultimate Warrior, who was the Intercontinental champion, Andre and Haku, the tag team champions, and Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million champion.
Yeah, DiBiase in the '89 Rumble was pulled the number 30.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in this one, he was
Number
he
one.
was number one. He lasted 44 minutes and 47 seconds.
Yeah, and Ted DiBiase was the first true Iron Man in the Rumble. The previous two Rumbles, I think Mr. Perfect was Iron Man at 25 minutes, but DiBiase was the first true Iron Man that lasted that long.
Yeah, the next longest in this one was 22:31 by Haku. So he went, double the time, almost double time of Haku.
Yeah, he did. And that was good that Haku got that amount of time. And Dusty Rhodes lasted almost 20 minutes.
Where's Dusty at?
Yeah, Dusty Rhodes lasted 18 minutes, which
Yeah.
is pretty good for a man of his size.
Yeah.
Let's see, one, two. So only two men lasted more than 20 minutes. 9, 10, 11, 12. 13 men lasted 10 minutes or longer. And I have a whole bunch of stats up here for this Royal Rumble. First of all, this Rumble is leading for the Rumble that now has the most deceased wrestlers.
Oh goodness.
13 wrestlers from this match are gone. 13 wrestlers.
That's almost half.
Almost half. And that is Randy Savage, Roddy Piper, Bad News Brown, Dusty Rhodes, Andre the Giant, Jimmy Snuka, Dino Bravo, Earthquake, Jim Neidhart, Warrior, Rick Rude, Hercules, and Mr. Perfect.
I guess Axe is still around.
Axe is still around, yep. Bill Eadie, 76 years old. But less than a year from now, he would be retired because he had his heart issues. So this here is the last Rumble that he was a part of. His last pay-per-view would be Survivor Series that year.
Is that why they brought in
Crush.
Yeah.
Yep. That's why they brought him in. But yeah, this Royal Rumble has the most deceased wrestlers. 91 Rumble has 12 wrestlers that are gone. Now, this is not including those on the undercard. This is just the Rumble match. If you include the undercard, then now you add in Butch, the Genius, and the Big Boss Man. Um, and this is just wrestlers. This is not including managers like Bobby Heenan. Um, I think Mr. Fuji is gone. Yeah, I think Mr. Fuji is gone. Sensational Sherry's gone. Virgil is now gone.
Yep.
So, so this Rumble has been hit the hardest out of all of them uh, so far. Uh, this is also the last Rumble to not have any last minute substitutions or surprises. That started in 91. Um, Red Rooster, I believe, was the last one announced, and that was on the weekend of the Rumble. Why that was, I have no idea. But I do know that.
Excuse me.
Sneeze it out.
Yeah, pollen's hitting.
And Red Rooster didn't last very long either in the Rumble.
Yeah,
He came in, Andre grabbed him, and
coming right out. I always liked Terry Taylor. I didn't like the Red Rooster gimmick.
well, it sounds like nobody did.
Chris did. He's always liked the Red Rooster work. Yeah.
This was also the first Rumble where we had what is now referred to as the Diesel spot. DiBiase really did it first. He and Coco Beware started it out. A minute and a half later, he threw Coco out. Marty Jannetty came in. Minute and a half later, he threw Marty out.
1 second in between the two.
Yeah.
136 and 135.
So it wasn't until Jake Roberts came in that the ring started to fill up. So DiBiase was the first one to really have that alone time. Although technically Hulk Hogan had that the previous year.
He is the third in that match on eliminations. Hogan and where is it at?
Hogan and Warrior.
Yeah, Hogan and Warrior both had 6. DiBiase had 4, 2 of which were in the first 3 minutes.
Yeah. This was also the first Rumble where they had that big gang up on the bigger guys, and 6 men. It took 6 men to eliminate Earthquake. The 2 previous Rumbles had no more than 2 people eliminating somebody at one time. Now you've had 6 on Earthquake, then a couple times where it took 3 men to get rid of somebody.
Yeah, Axe and Smash eliminated Andre.
Yes. And having Axe, Smash, and Andre in there together was very much how it was at the beginning of the previous Rumble. Because Axe and Smash started the Rumble, and then Andre came in at number 3. And Andre lasted 10 minutes in this Rumble, which is really good considering he was in that tail end of his career where it was getting harder and harder and harder for him to do anything. So him being able to be in this thing for 10 minutes is quite the feat.
Well, even during WrestleMania 3,
yeah, and that was 3 years before this.
Yeah. Vince had called him and said, "Look, I need you at, you know, WrestleMania 3." It's like, don't know if I can do it because they actually Vince called him while he was still shooting on um, is it Princess Bride?
Princess Bride.
Um, and at that time, his health was just so bad, wrestling wise. And you can really watch that match between Hogan and Andre, and it's very hard for him to move around.
Mm-hmm. And to think he continued on for 4 more years after that.
Yeah,
You got to respect him. He enjoyed what he did, even though it hurt him so much. But Andre was very instrumental in those formative years for them. Um,
he always liked that.
yeah, he was one of those very few real legends when WWF started their pay per view thing, and it just kept on going. So for him to be able to last 10 minutes into this match, taking on everybody, um, he came in, eliminated the Warlord right away. And this is the only Rumble where the Warlord lasted more than a minute. The previous year, he lasted 2 seconds.
Good Lord.
Yeah. The 91 Rumble, he lasted a minute 35. And the 92 Rumble, he lasted a minute 43. So this is the only Rumble out of 4 that he lasted more than 2 minutes. Why he wasn't given a bigger spot, I don't know.
At that time you got the Road Warriors, you got the Ultimate Warrior.
Well, Road Warriors weren't in WWF
No,
at the time of this Rumble. They would be later on in the year, but not at this time.
you got a lot of guys that look the same far as their makeup.
Yeah. There were some guys in here that didn't really get much of a chance to really showcase anything. Shawn Michaels lasted 12 seconds. And who would have thought that in 5 years from this night, he'd be winning 2 Rumbles in a row? You'd have never guessed it from that 12-second spot there, would you?
No, this was why they were still him and Jannetty were still together. Even
Yeah,
Mark Jannetty lasted longer than him.
I know. Marty Jannetty was 1 minute 35 seconds. He lasted the longest out of the Rockers.
Yeah, he lasted 12 seconds.
Akeem lasted 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and he was thrown out by Snuka.
The Red Rooster even lasted longer than he did. At 158.
Yeah, Red Rooster lasted longer than Jannetty, Coco Beware, and Shawn Michaels.
That's funny. Maybe it's like, oh, I'm not going out either. I'm going to stand over here in the corner.
Now, what about the showstopper in the middle of this whole thing? Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior. The crowd went nuts. The crowd was completely insane.
that was two big names, two big guys, two crowd favorites that are now, and it reminds me of was it Rumble last year? Was it Rumble last year when Jay and or was that this year? No, that was this year. Jay and Jimmy in the ring together.
This year.
Yeah, that's another big, big thing. It's like not quite as big, but that's like, oh my God, this is fixing
But
to happen.
last year it was Gunther and Brock.
Yeah, and we'll get into that thing too. Brock is now back on the website and all that stuff. So I don't know what they're going to do with that.
Who knows? And somebody's saying that Brock was never taken down. I never looked. I don't care. I don't care if they're listed on a website or not. All I know is he's not on TV.
Right.
I don't care if he's listed on a website.
And Brock, as good as he is and all the accolades he's gotten, he's one of those guys that it doesn't really matter to me if he comes to WrestleMania or not. It's one of those guys that like, it doesn't really matter to me.
But Brock is also in a position where he doesn't have to do anything ever again if he doesn't
Right.
want.
Right.
He's got enough money to last the rest of his life.
Yeah. Especially considering the lifestyle that he leads, outside of this, he's him and Sable are got their ranch, and at last I watched a documentary on him, and it was like,
Butcher shop.
do what?
He's got a butcher shop.
Yeah, he's got a big cattle ranch, and he's
Yeah.
very not connected to social
Now
media.
that said, with all the implications and everything, it depends on what that's going to do to his marriage with Sable.
Right.
So
And I'm sure Sable knows a lot of stuff that went on backstage. Because it
well,
was at that Attitude Era where there was a lot of stuff going on.
but look at what Sable did. It said that she filed lawsuit against McMahon over sexual harassment and stuff like that. So if it turns out that her husband took part in even half the stuff that Vince did,
Mhm.
this lady said that Vince did, I can't see Sable turning the cheek
Yeah.
after what she said she had been through. Oh, but I'm sure over time we may or may not find out. Honestly, it's none of our business, but it's being put out there in the public.
Right.
But yeah, Hogan and Warrior. That is just one of those iconic moments that is very rarely ever matched.
Right. And this was, of course, a lead up to WrestleMania 5.
6.
6. That's right. 5 was Macho, wasn't it?
Macho and
Yeah. But yeah, 6 was the first pay-per-view that I actually got to watch while it was happening. I recorded it at a buddy of mine's house. They had satellite back then.
What's interesting before this match, when they were doing the comments from all of the wrestlers, Warrior singled out Hogan because he's talking about 28 mortal men in 28. Wait, there's 29 other men, and then it goes in that 29th man, the other force, or whatever the hell he said.
you, he wasn't known for having great promos, verbal wise.
They were not great promos, but they were memorable.
He had that thing of screaming and hollering and just going off in the left field,
Yeah,
and half of the stuff you couldn't understand what he was saying.
that's why you remember it so well.
That and the snorting.
Yeah, yep, yep. Uh,
But I always liked Warrior. From the time I first saw him come in at WrestleMania
everybody.
3. WrestleMania 3 when he
No, it
defeated.
was
It
it
was 3.
wasn't three. He didn't debut until the summer of '87.
Maybe it was SummerSlam. It was SummerSlam. Um, when he come in and beat Honky Tonk.
Yeah, that was SummerSlam '88. Warrior made his debut in '87. I don't remember if he was in the '87 Survivor Series, but he was in the '87 Rumble or the '88 Rumble. Um, and then the '89 Rumble, he had that pose down thing with Rick Rude, which I don't understand why they did that. They could have had a match.
Yeah. Well, no, it was Jake Roberts. I was thinking there was a little feud there going. That was Jake Roberts. I was thinking of Rick Rude and Jake Roberts when uh, Jake's wife was, you know, topic of conversation between them two.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And he had Rick Rude had Jake's wife on his trunks too.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Warrior, when he came in, he comes in, he's throwing everybody out. Face, heel, it didn't matter. He saw a body, he went to go throw him out. He did that to Tito Santana. He did that to Jim Neidhart. He didn't care who you were. If you were a body in that ring, he was going to get rid of you.
Let's see.
And he was also the one that got rid of DiBiase, and the place exploded when DiBiase was gone.
Yeah. DiBiase, Martel, Rick Martel, Tito Santana, Shawn Michaels.
Are you looking at the Wikipedia page?
Yeah.
I have actually edited that page. In fact, if you look at the view history, you'll see my name in there.
Let me see. Let me see.
Last time I edited it was a year ago, and that was to add Ted DiBiase's name to the list of people who eliminated Jim Neidhart. Um, this Rumble here. Now, I don't remember if any of the managers were allowed in the '88 Rumble. I don't think they were. They weren't allowed in '89, but managers were allowed to stay at ringside for this Rumble. Uh, Mr. Fuji and Bobby Heenan got into it. And then Virgil you could see him actually holding on to DiBiase, trying to keep him in the ring.
Yeah.
Um, Then Hogan, after Hogan and Warrior had their little standoff, double clothesline, then the Barbarian comes in and he's able to have his way with both of them. And then all of a sudden, Rick Rude comes in before the countdown even starts.
Wonder why that was. Just one of those things, or
I don't know. I don't know if that was the way they wanted it to go, or if there was an actual issue with the time clock. I have no idea. But the time clock showed up after he got into the ring. Then as Barbarian and Rick Rude are trying to get rid of the Warrior, Hogan comes in and clotheslines them, and it gets rid of the Warrior.
and then he jumps back in.
Yeah, he gets back in, and he clotheslines Barbarian and Rude, and then he leaves. He puts Prince out of there, which...
That's par for the Warrior.
It is. Yeah, it's very Ultimate Warrior, but still is kind of weird. Then Hercules comes in and Mr. Perfect. Now, when Mr. Perfect came out, to me, it didn't seem like he got much of a reaction from the crowd at all. Everybody else did, but it seemed like Perfect got next to nothing.
When he did that stint before he passed, he came back in WWE as Mr. Perfect, and the gimmick wasn't working.
No, he didn't last long, and then he passed a year later, I think it was.
But I remember when he came back, I was like, it's Mr. Perfect, and he's doing the whole perfect this, perfect that. It's like, and the chewing gum, and like, I was like, this just not getting over. The heyday is over.
Different time.
Yep.
It was a different time. Let's see here. I have a list. This here is this Rumble is tied with the men's 2022 Rumble, where it has the most wrestlers actually earning an elimination at 20. So 20 men in this Rumble got an elimination. Coco Beware is the first man out.
Marty Jannetty didn't get anybody out. Jake the Snake didn't. The Warlord, Bret Hart. That's surprising. Bret Hart didn't eliminate anybody. Andre, of course, which is another crazy one. Akeem didn't throw anybody over.
No.
Honky Tonk Man.
No, Andre got an elimination. He eliminated the Rooster. Didn't eliminate anybody.
Okay, maybe where's it at?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Misread that. Akeem, Santana, Honky Tonk. Of course, Shawn Michaels, because he wasn't in there very long.
No.
Now, you would say, let me see if I can find him. If you want to be official about it, Bad News Brown shouldn't have gotten an elimination of Roddy Piper because he was already eliminated.
Yeah, Um,
But that's always been a thing. Uh, it's not the first time it's happened. I'm sure it won't be the last. Um,
oh, I definitely wasn't the last.
um,
Well, Hulk Hogan eliminated Boss Man the year before after he was eliminated.
I've seen some people. I've caught it. Watching people go under the rope. I remember a couple of times somebody going under the rope or going mid through the rope or something to the matter. They actually didn't go over the top rope when they got eliminated, but it was one of those little weird fluke things.
No, that's never happened.
I've seen where
Oh well, no, I take that back. Hornswoggle in the 2008 Rumble, he went underneath the ropes and never came back in.
trying to think of who went under the ropes and then came back in much later in the match.
Oh, that's been done a few times. Jerry Lawler's done that. Rusev has done that. Santino Marella has done that. Uh, Hornswoggle's done that.
Did McMahon do that one time?
He did. He didn't hide under the ring. He and Austin went out of the ring right at the beginning of the Rumble and went fighting into the concession stand.
Mm-hmm.
Then Austin was taken to the hospital, and McMahon came out to do commentary. Then Austin came back in, got rid of everybody, and that left McMahon. He got him and threw him back in the ring. Yeah, that did happen. Randy Orton, Roman Reigns, that's happened to them. Yeah, that's happened several times where the guys leave the ring and they don't come back until much later. And I think Austin and McMahon were the first ones to do that. Um, this is what I was working on before we started this show. I was actually working on the Royal Rumbles where their participants were former or current world champions at that point. And there were one, two, three, four, five, six of them in the 90 Rumble. And I am counting DiBiase because he actually defended the WWF title before he got stripped of it. So I see him as a former world champion. So DiBiase, Randy Savage, and Andre the Giant are former WWF champions in this Rumble. And then you have Dusty Rhodes, who was the NWA champion. And then Rick Martel and Mr. Perfect, who were AWA world champions, all in this Rumble. Then, of course, Hulk Hogan was the current World Wrestling Federation champion. So that was 7 world champions in the 90 Rumble. Then as as the years would go by, you start getting into the Rumbles where literally half of the field is former world champions.
Right.
But here in the beginning, the 1988 Rumble only had one world champion, and that was Harley Race. Then the 89 Rumble had Andre, Mr. Perfect, Ronnie Garvin, Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, Rick Martel, and DiBiase. And like I said, yes, I do count Ted DiBiase as a former world champion.
That's when Andre gave it to him. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Andre forfeited it to him, and then DiBiase actually defended the title.
Who did he defend against?
Let's see here. Bacon. Bam Bam Bigelow.
Okay. That's another one that's gone.
Yeah.
I remember back in the old days, or is that? I think One Man Gang also had a tattoo on his head
He did.
because he had One Man Gang had the mohawk. Do
Yeah.
what?
He had a tattoo on both sides of his head.
I think it was it a skull? Skull and crossbones, maybe.
Maybe. I never really got a close look at it. I just knew that he had tattoo on both sides of his mohawk. But it would make sense to be a skull and bones because that's what his symbol was.
Looks like a skull on that side.
Actually, Chris,
George Gray is his actual name.
DiBiase didn't even draw his number. It was Virgil who drew the number.
And that could have been the build up to leading to their split.
Eventually,
I don't know that for sure, but
they finally did split at the 91 Rumble.
Is One Man Gang gone? Because it doesn't see here. It doesn't have a death date on it.
I don't. No, he's not. He's still around. One Man Gang is only 64.
Yeah, that's. I was watching. I was watching a documentary on. Oh, I know what it was. It was WrestleMania Rewind, and I was watching that series the other day on Peacock, and they were talking about. They didn't. Well, I thought it was going to be every WrestleMania, but it's like I watched. They had one. They had two. They had three, and then they skipped way up. Didn't do each one, but they were talking about WrestleMania 3, and of course they were talking about Andre him passing, and Andre was really young when he passed.
Yeah, he's 46.
Yeah, something like that. 43,
Yeah,
46. I say really young compared to.
What's really sad about his passing is that he had just attended his father's funeral. And then he passed.
He was punished for buying 30 in the previous year's Rumble.
Well, according to the interviews that they were doing backstage at the 90 Rumble, that DiBiase was complaining that he did not even have the opportunity to draw his own number. And then Gene Oakland said, that's because you asked Virgil to draw your number. and that's when they revealed that he had number one.
Oh, speaking of one man gang, on May 5th, 85, he lost to Kerry Von Erich in a hair versus hair match. This is where he started sporting the mohawk. Christmas Star Wars.
I
He
did not.
lost to he lost to Bruiser Brody in a chain match at Christmas Star Wars 1985.
Oh man, can you imagine the brutality of that match? Yeah, Bruiser Brody was wow. That was somebody I would have loved to have seen in WWF.
Of course, he became Big Bubba Rogers. And then, of course, Akeem, which is crazy. You go from the one man gang to Akeem.
And he was a good sport about it too.
Built from,
As long as they kept giving him a paycheck, he went with it.
yeah, he retired in 2009. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they changed his persona there. Maybe he come in as one man gang, and
It was basically to make him fresh again. That's really what it was. It was to make him fresh, and it wasn't that they took him off and then brought him back in as a new person. It was known that one man gang was turning into Akeem by embracing his South African roots. So they did not keep that a secret, like, for example, um, like the Iron Sheik turning into Colonel Mustafa, or something like that.
right.
So now another interesting thing about the 90 Rumble, Mr. Perfect was supposed to have been the winner of that one. And somehow Hogan,
Uses politics.
yeah, somehow Hogan did it, but Perfect was supposed to have been the winner of that Rumble. When you look at all the Rumbles that he had been in, technically Hogan should not have been a winner of any of them. Because in the 91 Rumble, Andre was supposed to be the winner. He was going to come in at number 30 and win that Rumble just so that, because they knew
He was
he
just
was
about
done.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Andre couldn't even do that. So he wasn't even in that Rumble. He was announced for it. He was promoted as being in the Rumble. But once that came around, his health was so bad he could not even get in the ring for that. Although Andre would eventually get back in the ring later on, but not at this particular time. And that's so Hogan ended up being the winner of that one.
Yeah. And it kind of falls into that whole era. Um, as a fan, and I've got a good buddy of mine. We watched wrestling. Matter of fact, I shared the video, the VHS of that WrestleMania 6, and he borrowed it and went and watched it, and bet his cousin on the last match. because I think he came to the house and we watched it, and he was like, "Oh," and he was doing the same thing I did. It's like, "Oh, great, here we go. Hogan's hulking up. He's going to do the leg drop and blah blah blah." Talk about the Warrior match. It's like, here we go again. Because as fans, some of us were getting tired of seeing Hogan do the same thing over and over and keep winning the championship match. Doing the same, boot and leg drop. You know, and but it seems like that match there was a Warrior splashed Hogan at the end, but it wasn't one of those very good ones, I guess I'd say, to pin Hogan at the end of it. And I think Hogan kicked out at like 4 or 3.5.
It,
Really close.
yeah, it was really close. Like 3.1 or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But that was a great match considering the two that.
That were in it. Yeah, that was. Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many people out there that say, Hogan is not the kind of guy who would have a great match. The only time he would have a great match is because of his opponent. And they would say the same thing about the Warrior. But when those two went at it, that was a great match.
If you look up some of Hogan's matches, like in Japan and stuff like that, he's actually wrestling.
Yeah.
It's not
I wish they'd have let him do that here in the States.
Yeah, he's actually doing, regular moves and stuff in there.
Yeah.
Stuff you wouldn't think Hogan would do.
And which is not really easy for a man of his size.
No, Ivor, talking about, big guys that do crazy stuff.
Yeah.
He's doing, moonsault and stuff.
Hogan doing a moonsault?
No, Ivor.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a guy that big should not be climbing on a rope. It reminds me of
Vader.
Yeah.
And Bigelow. Bigelow did it too.
Yeah. The one that sticks out to me is like Brock Lesnar going to do a shooting star press. And I was like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah, but with Brock, he is extremely athletic.
And
he's a big man, but he's not big like the other guys are.
Right. You don't expect a big guy like that to get on top rope and start doing crazy stuff. And then when I saw him climbing up the rope, I was watching that match. I think it was Kurt Angle that he was wrestling. And I was like, oh my God, what is he doing? And Kurt Angle's way far away. I don't know if that was on.
He almost killed himself.
Yeah. I mean, he did that shooting star, and I was like, he just landed on his head.
Mm-hmm.
He's lucky he didn't end his life or his career right there. Of course, he was dazed after that.
Yeah.
You could see after he had won the match and look into his eyes, they were glassed over.
So here in this Rumble, was, it was a hell of a roster that they had on this one. The start of it was great. You had DiBiase, and then you had two guys that come in that you don't really expect much out of them, even in singles matches, Coco and Marty. And then here comes Jake, and here comes Randy, here comes Roddy. That foursome there in the ring, DiBiase, Roddy, the Snake, Savage. Holy cow.
I'm going to throw something out here. And of course, my old Mid-South days, I'm always bringing that up. Mid-South wise, that I know of without looking at Wikipedia. Ted DiBiase was there. Coco Beware was there. Roberts was there. I think Dusty might have been. I know Andre had been there. Of course, Terry Taylor, Red Rooster. Warrior was there. I don't think Shawn. No, Shawn Michaels came after that, but he was. No, I'm thinking of somebody else. Never mind.
I know it started in Texas.
The Barbarian. Hercules was there.
And then you have Mr. Perfect.
Akeem under One Man Gang.
Yeah. Mr. Perfect and Rick Martel, who came from AWA. Bad News Brown was in Stampede Wrestling with Bret Hart.
And I believe that started the feud with Piper and Bad News Brown.
Yes. Yeah, they had their match at WrestleMania 6.
Is that
There's a lot of matches at WrestleMania 6 that came from this
Rumble
event.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hogan and Warrior, Bad News and Piper, Mr. Perfect and Beefcake.
Dusty and
Dusty,
Macho.
yep. Ted DiBiase and Jake Roberts had a match at Mania. Andre and Haku and Demolition at WrestleMania. There was a lot of matches that came from this.
HBK was in Mid-South too?
Yeah, it would only make sense. And Sean and Marty were also in the AWA. Actually, we're at that time where you said you had to go, right?
Yeah, I should have done. I should be on the road right now, but.
Okay. So what do you say we call it and let you go?
All right. That'll work. Cup of coffee, but yeah. Huh?
So yeah, the 1990 Royal Rumble as a whole, I thought was a good pay-per-view.
It was. Sorry. Yeah, it was a good pay-per-view. I enjoy watching these old pay-per-views.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how much longer we're going to have access to it after Netflix gets the whole, Raw and all that. I'm hoping that, we still have access.
The way I understand it, everything is supposed to go through.
So everything is going to be on Netflix?
It's supposed to be.
Being the kind of money that was dumped, I would
but they also say that Peacock is contracted up until 2026. So it's like there's going to be some sort of an overlap, and I don't know.
I'm going to enjoy the whole Netflix Raw thing because, I don't have cable. So it'll give me an opportunity to watch Raw when I'm not at work.
I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do because I'm only paying $6 a month $6 a month for Peacock. So if everything goes over to Netflix, I'm going to have to figure out see what Netflix is going to cost, and then I'll cancel Peacock because I'm not going to have both.
Yeah, we've got both, and we've got works out really good at the station because you got so many guys there, and I've got Netflix and Peacock, and then other guys have got Paramount, and some other guys have got Disney, and it's like so we're logged in at work. So at any given time, you can watch pretty much whatever you want to on there.
Yeah.
We've been we've been uh, we've been watching Tubi here.
That's free though.
Yeah, that's free, and we've gotten on this kick of me and another guy of watching 80s horror movies and picking the absolute stuff we haven't seen before. And yeah, there's some pretty bad horror movies out there.
But there's a certain magic in the 80s movies.
You know, I've always been a big fan of B horror movies
Yeah.
back in the 80s. And it's like I'm watching some of these movies I've not seen before, and it's like some of the stuff that goes on in the movie is like this just don't make any sense. Why would you do that? You know, there's this zombie movie we watched, and this guy, the movie is like they're like really slow moving, and it's like, oh my god, here they come, you know, and they're like barely moving. It's like just run or walk fast.
Right now, I'm watching this
Season 2.
Creep Show.
I
And
love the original. I love the original Creep Show.
the cartoon aspect of it reminds me so much of the original.
I didn't realize there was a cartoon version.
No, it's you know how on Creepshow you had that cartoon spot
Mhm.
before it goes into the actual thing, and
Yeah.
then it kind of goes into a cartoon spot again before it goes to the actual story. That's
Right.
how this is set up.
Okay.
That's how this is set
And
up.
that's a series?
Yeah, they did
A
it.
standalone movie?
Yeah, they turned this into a series a number of years ago, and they're done. They've done 4 seasons of it,
Okay.
and right now I'm just watching season 2.
I'm about to look that up.
Yeah, it's a good series. I've got the first 2 seasons on DVD, well, Blu-ray actually.
Is Blu-ray still a thing?
Well, Blu-ray was supposed to have been taking the place of DVD, but now it's DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K.
Right. Well, now you got so much streaming stuff now, you know,
Yeah.
as compared to
Well, I don't
10
do
years ago.
Yeah, I don't do streaming because you're basically at the mercy of the company. Rather, if you want to watch something, they have free will to take anything off they want. I'm not having that.
Oh, the one thing that bothers me with streaming too is like you get these new series that come out. Oh, it's new on Netflix, you know, season 1. I was like, I don't want to get invested in a show that's only got 1 season because they may not pick the dang thing back up, and I'm stuck.
Well, it's going to be like that on every show.
Yeah.
The thing that I've heard more than anything else is that people are halfway through a season, then all of a sudden the season's gone.
Right.
I'm not having that.
There was a movie. There was a show on Netflix that only lasted 1 season. I think Santa Clara Diet with Drew Barrymore.
Never heard of it.
No.
No.
She, if I remember right, she dies, but she's alive, and she's craving human flesh, and all. It's kind of a horror comedy. It's actually pretty good.
Drew Barrymore?
Yeah. The Santa Clara Diet.
Santa Clarita Diet.
There it is.
Okay.
I actually enjoyed the show, and they didn't pick it back up.
Series centers on husband and wife real estate team who live normal, mundane lives, and then it changes dramatically when she shows symptoms of having become a zombie. Well, there's 3 seasons of it.
Oh, it was 3 seasons. Okay.
Yeah, 3 seasons, 30 episodes.
Well, it may be that whole thing where they pulled it after I watched 1 season of it. I may have to go back and watch 2 and 3 then.
Yeah, I
Of course, you got to watch the seasons and all too. Some, that first season's always going to be short run. Not as many episodes in the season as compared to something that's picked up for a couple more seasons where they add another 10, 12 of them in there.
most seasons now are 10 or 12 episodes, which bugs the hell out of me. I'm so used to 26 being the norm. And now 26 episodes is almost 3 seasons. I'm thinking, what? No. It's almost like you can't come up with enough stories to fill up a season. Whatever.
Yeah.
All right, so I give Royal Rumble 1990 2 thumbs up, and want to thank Nick Opalewski,
Apaluski. That's close.
yeah, for recommending this. Good show to watch. Good Rumble. A lot of fantastic moments in it. Not just in the Rumble match itself, but also
Actually, the
even
whole
yeah,
card.
yeah. But I would have to say that Ronnie Garvin and Greg Valentine, that was the match of the night.
Yeah, it'd be nice to maybe do a review on the '93 Rumble when they started the actual having the winner go to WrestleMania. We'll wait till after this WrestleMania though, because this is going to be, I'm sure, the topic of the next three or four, episodes here.
Well, the next 2 for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see, and next weekend you're going to be working, right?
Let me see yes, next Sunday I work.
What
Next
about
Saturday. Next Saturday I'm busy. Next Sunday, yeah. Next weekend I'm tied up.
So then we're not going to have a show until in between the 2 WrestleManias. And the WrestleMania card is shaping up to be a good one too.
And I will be off that weekend. Well, I'll be off that weekend. Who knows with the way my work schedule is now because we're shorthanded. So any given time I could have to work somewhere. Hopefully that won't happen on the 7th.
Yeah. Well, if it does happen on the 7th, then I could probably just go ahead and do something with Chris and Joe.
And it may be the fact I can come on, but not screen wise. I come on verbal.
Yeah.
Just see how it goes.
Too bad you couldn't do the show from the firehouse.
Yeah, it's probably frowned upon.
Oh. Had to try.
And at any given time, I can be. If you got somebody else on the show, it'd be awesome. Just in case, if I am working that day and I get a call, then I'm just gonna disconnect really quick.
Well, we talked about having Chris and Joe on anyway for that episode because we're all going to have something to say.
Oh yeah. Well, let me get out of here. I'm supposed to be on the road already, and I still have probably an hour worth of stuff I got to get done.
All right. Well, until next time, everybody, thank you for playing along. The next show will be on April 7th. Time to be determined. We'll figure that out as we get closer, but
Thank
we
you,
will be talking about what has happened on night 1 of WrestleMania and talk about what we think is going to happen on night 2.
Yeah, SmackDown wasn't that great Friday. It was
I only saw one clip of it, and that was The Rock, and I thought that was one of his best moments. As much as he is being the heel, the crowd loves him.
Yeah. And that was just up the road about 3 hours from me. But I wasn't going to Memphis at night. 2, I wasn't going to pay the amount of money that they wanted for tickets.
Yeah. All right. So until next time, everybody out there have a great rest of your weekend. And Donald, I will talk to you whenever. Have
Thank
a good
y'all.
day, everybody.